Hello friends, welcome to another video. In this video we are going to talk about branding strategy and design overall, and in this specific example I am taking a YouTuber and a creator who creates content around coffee. And in this specific video I am going to talk about how should you approach when you are creating a brand like this, and for any brand in general. And if you are creating content or any sort of content on the internet, how should you strategize it and create this path where you can just implement that plan and get success. So to start off, I started by just getting the feel of the scenario and the landscape of this niche. And since this is a niche related to coffee, this is a really competitive one. And I went to Google Trends and found out what are the search results like and what are the results of the trends that are around coffee. And one good insight that I found from it was that a lot of hype around coffee was just because of Starbucks. As you can see, the blue line here is the total trends around coffee. Half of that is the search term or the trends around Starbucks itself. So the coffee space is dominated by big brands who make standardized brews for the customers and not specifically crafted. For the next part, I thought if brands dominate the overall coffee space and content around it, or even the search trends, is coffee all about coffee or brews from these brands? And certainly not. Coffee is much bigger than these brands. And then I found out what are the things that are related to coffee which are not these brands, which is the process of making the coffee, baristas who hone the craft of creating the coffee, and people who hang out at the cafes, coffee shops, and roasters, and the craft related to coffee brewing. And most important is the people. If you are creating a brand, you should always get to know the space first and who are the leaders in that space, so that it would help you to get your approach right. And the next part of the process will be starting with a why. So this is called as the meaningful difference that you create by creating value in the world. So if you are making a brand of any kind, it's important to know the landscape first and then derive your reason of existence from it. It is called the meaningful difference. And for this brand particularly, I wanted to create a contrast from this branded brewed coffee and wanted to shift the focus from that standardized process to a craft where the coffee is sourced, brewed and roasted, and people who are dedicated towards and have passion towards creating coffee and telling stories about those people. So that was the main difference. So there was this quote which inspired a lot for this brand strategy was, the art is not what you see but what you make others see. And if you look at it, the art of brewing and sourcing good coffee is almost behind the scenes and nobody really cares about it. And if you make content around that part and if you get popular, that art others will also be able to see. So basically the cafe craft and the cult around coffee, it would get highlighted with this brand. And I decided to give a simple name to it, that is Coffee Buff, which is basically people who are passionate around coffee. And what would it do is basically, rather than just showing and giving standardized brews, it would create a culture or tell stories about people who make coffee and are passionate around coffee. And how would we do it? So this comes to the specific implementation part. I decided, in order to highlight that specific craft of coffee, I've decided that we would showcase more stories of people and coffee shops and other related things, and mostly it would also be a travel. It would also have a theme of travel and blogging, food blogging specifically. Now the next step would be, when you have a sort of a narrow thing that you would implement to make your brand stand out, it's important to know and set the expectations right. For the coffee niche specifically, maximum YouTube subscriber in the niche was 158,000 by European Coffee Trip, and maximum Instagram followers was obviously by Starbucks, and for in India specifically it was this much for Starbucks India, and the second and third place was by Blue Tokai and Sleepy Owl. Next, I chalked out a roadmap. So if you know the end goal that you can reach maximum, then you could lay out a plan, and this needs not be a number based goal but a process based goal, which would help you to create content consistently. So in this case, so the timeline at the bottom can change. It could, depending upon the market and the quality of content that you make, but the plan remains the same. For example, for first 6 months we would create alternate day reels and bi-weekly YouTube videos, and for creating this for at least 1 year, the plan is to have enough following that we could reduce the frequency of reels and create more engaging audience, so that the audience that we have gathered is more engaged, and start collecting emails. So in that case, it would help to get this super fans out from the lot. And after 2 years of doing this consistently, the plan is that to gather enough following which would help us get paid features of the cafe, and there should be a restriction that we only features cafes or people who really care about creating good coffee for their customer, or at least an experience which is really worth it. And at this point, the plan is to, if we have a lot of following or some initial traction, we could collaborate with other creators and ask them to share their stories and sort of make a mini feature around it. And if you are making a brand and you're starting a brand, it always helps to have a long-term goal towards which you are always working. So in this case, around 3 to 4 years, the plans are to have a dedicated Spotify exclusive podcast, or an international story, or a document series, or a series on an OTT platform. Although this might not feel attainable at the start, but this would really help. Next step is to create a content head. Now, content pillars are the things that you create content around, which would help set the theme of your channel, and these are the 5 things that I listed. And also, if you are deciding the content pillars, it's important to measure those on the type of content pillars that they are. So in this case, one is the discovery one and another one is retention. So discovery things are the ones that the content pieces that give you more followers, and the retention thing is the thing that helps your audience get engaged with you. So in this case, how to lists and local cafe features are important for discovery, and retention will be given. Retention is basically serving to people who are really into the topic and are super fans of your channel, and for them, they are interested in the trivia history of coffee, or in general the domain, and some personal stories or documentary series. And through my research, I also found that reviews of products and home brewing processes really help and is like the evergreen content in this niche specifically. And the next step is to define your audience. When you are defining your audience, it's important to nail down specifically what they do and how we would create value for that audience. So in this case, I have targeted travelers and remote workers, people who shift cities or are new in any given cities. In that case, they would extract value from our content by getting some information about the best cafes in their cities. And people who are already coffee lovers or very much into cafe hunting, they would discover new cafes which are cooler or probably better than their favorite cafes. And last one is the home brewers, people who are interested in coffee, making coffee at their home and are interested in getting some equipments. For them, we will be making the reviews of different equipments and some showcasing and highlighting some home brewing processes. The next one is the visual design aspect. I will talk about this in the next part, where I talk specifically about how to craft a visual identity which is aligned to your long-term goals. So that's it for this video. If you are making any brand, do keep these steps in mind, and really it comes down to knowing the space really well and researching enough that you find that areas where you can thrive and your brand can really grow into a thing that would fetch you returns of your efforts and resources. So that's all for this video, and I will see you in the next one with the part 2 of this one, where I talk about all the visual design aspect of this brand.